This is what we show the guests.
Hello! At some of the destinations we visit, we have to anchor offshore, away from the quayside. You'll get ashore using our own boats or short boats called tenders. This short film explains the few basic rules of using tenders so you'll reach the land safe and dry. To board, you'll need to step, without jumping, from the ship's platform to the tender. Now, depending on which boats we're using and what the weather's doing, this could mean stepping over a foot-wide gap. That's about 30 centimetres. There could also be steps either to get into the tender or to get ashore. These could be up to 8 inches or 20 centimetres high. So before boarding a tender, it's important to check you are mobile enough to navigate the gap and use any steps unaided. To us, mobile enough means being able to step across a gap of about 1.5 feet. That's roughly 45 centimetres. Now, the crew can guide and steady you, but they cannot and will not lift, support or carry you. We're quite strict on this, so anyone wanting to use the tender could be asked to take a quick mobility test. Don't worry, you won't be put through your paces, we'll just need to check you managed to board okay. If an officer decides you're not safe to board, please respect their decision. It's for your own safety. Of course, if you use a wheelchair or mobility scooter, you're welcome aboard the tender, providing you can get out of your mobility aid and embark on foot without being lifted, carried or supported by crew. And this goes for everyone. Please wear sensible flat shoes. We've seen lots of flip-flops disappear down the gap, so save the slip-ons for another day. When you're on the tender, follow the instructions from our crew and stay in your seat. We'll tell you when we're ready for you to get in and out of the tender. So that's a quick introduction to safety on board our tenders. If there's anything else you'd like to know about the mobility required to use these boats, please ask one of the officers here. Or, if you would prefer, mention it at reception and an officer will be in touch. Thanks for watching.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, mobility. The purpose of the video that we've just seen is to make our guests aware that it may not just be a simple step into a tender, and they should contact reception if they may find this difficult. What they don't understand is that in some places where we go, and the sea is choppy, the boat is moving, yeah, in and out and up and down,
Yeah.
and they don't realise that when they get down there. So to that end, we as working staff, we have the right to stop anybody who we think will be unsafe getting onto the boat. Okay, and we must do that. Bring that to the officer in charge's attention if you think somebody is unsafe. If it's necessary, they'll be asked to conduct the step test to demonstrate, and that's normally done the day before tendering. Okay? They'll be able to board the tender. It's possible that we may be unable to transport them if their mobility affects their or other guests' safety. Okay? Now, they will be disappointed and they will argue it, but safety comes first. Okay? So we need to make sure that guests are safe as well as happy. So there are some restrictions on how we assist them. This is what we can do. We assist them by taking their hand and their elbow. We assist with wheelchair mobility and scooters where practical and safe to do so. We will assist by taking and stowing a folded wheelchair in the tender. And we will assist by putting these into and out of the tender, providing that no individual part weighs more than 20 kilograms. Now, I know some of these mobility scooters weigh more than 20 kilograms, and I know we move them, yeah? So just be careful. The thing to note there is if you're going to grab somebody by their hand and their elbow, don't just do it. Offer your hand and offer to help them, because sometimes they will pull away from you. Sometimes they don't want you to touch them.
Yes.
Yeah? So don't leave yourself open to somebody making a complaint against you. Yeah? You can show that you're willing to help. If they want help, they'll ask for it. If they don't, then just let them go and just
Assist.
ride. Yeah? What we don't do is lift, support or carry any passenger. Okay? We mustn't assemble or take apart any wheelchair or mobility aid. And we mustn't carry heavy mobility scooters down the gangway or into and out of the tender. And we mustn't carry heavy components of a wheelchair or a mobility scooter. So whether you're assisting people to get into or out of the tenders or assisting them up and down the ramps, it's important that you do so safely for both you and the person that you are assisting. Now, there's always an officer in charge, and if at any time you're unsure, you should ask them. However, if you can't, you too can make a decision, like I just said to you. You have that power. If there's a large gap between the landing area and the tender, stop people until the boat settles down. Yeah? Or if you feel that someone is unable or safe to embark or disembark, stop them. Always inform the officer in charge if you need to stop the process for any reason, and if you are in any doubt about anything, then ask them for guidance. Remember that you're there not to lift, carry or use any force to assist people. You're there to guide and steady them should they need assisting. Okay, now they've got their hands on, so the person must have asked for it, okay? When a guest is getting in or out the tender, there must be one person on each side of the entrance, okay? We can't just have one. Both assisting in the same way. Use one hand to hold the guest's hand, while the other one loosely grips the elbow, should they ask for it. Inside the tender assistant should also be doing the same to assist people to and from their seating area. The tender assistant should be situated in the middle of the tender and should also be counting the passengers on.
Yes.
Remember, you need to control the flow so that people are not queued up inside the tender when it's moving, or on the pontoon waiting to embark or disembark, or waiting on the gangway or accommodation ladders. Controlling the flow will ensure that people are not waiting in potentially dangerous areas. On the tender crew need to exercise control during embarkation or disembarkation so that people aren't standing around in an unsteady tender. Move people quickly away from the boarding area where they could fall into the water. Assist guests who are less steady on their feet, such as wheelchair and walking frame users, away from the edge of the quayside, and guide or assist them into an area away from the main route to or from the tender, where they can easily set up their mobility aid without risk of falling into the water or being knocked over by other people. So I don't know if you were there when I was there yesterday, and I was saying we need a safe area.
Yes.
And that safe area isn't at the end of the gangway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what will happen is people will congregate there to fix their pushchairs, their wheelchairs, their mobility aids, and that stops the flow of people coming off the gangway.
Yeah.
And then when people start pushing past, that's when somebody falls off the jetty into the water.
Right.
Okay? So whether you're on the pontoon, platform or a shore landing area, both the deck crew and the hotel crew are there to assist as required. The deck crew are there to rig barriers to keep people away from dangerous areas, making sure that the pontoon or the quayside is properly rigged with fenders, and making fast and letting go the tender moorings, and assisting people into and out of the tenders. Hotel crew, assisting people away from the tender boarding area, assisting on the steps or ramps from the immediate landing area, and assisting those with mobility difficulties to a safe area to be able to get into their wheelchair, keeping the area clear of slip and trip hazards. So, to assist those with mobility difficulties, stow the aids safely on board. It's always the last thing to be loaded, and it always goes in the centre passageway, okay? It's important that the deck guys go to the tender briefing, because you will then understand what side to the boat is going. So when you have mobility aids, you can get them on the right side of the boat so that they're the first thing to be unloaded. Unload the mobility aids before the guests disembark. Place the mobility aids on the landing area away from the dock edge and away from the main flow of passenger traffic. That's the safe area. If needed, assist the guest to each of their mobility aids, to reach their mobility aids. So, pontoon and shore party equipment. Both on the pontoon and ashore, in addition to the cleats and mooring arrangements, we are required to have items of safety and equipment ready for immediate use. And we practiced this yesterday, if you remember.
Yeah.
So we had the man overboard drill on the quayside, yeah? So this is the equipment that we should have. We should have the recovery hook with the reach pole, yeah? We should have a ladder for water exit. We should have a Jason's cradle We should have a rescue pole or a boat hook. We should also have a life buoy on a rope, and we may have a mat, a step and a gazebo, depending on where we're at. Okay? Accidents and emergencies. So accidents are mostly slips, trips and falls, resulting in minor scrapes, but there is always the risk of people falling from the pontoon and the shore landing area into the water. I told you yesterday a story about my last ship where the lady drove her mobility scooter off the jetty. Did I tell you, were you there for that story?
No.
So on my last ship, we were in St. Kitts, and the lady was driving her mobility scooter back to the ship, and we had an Ada cruise ship here, and I was on the Queen Mary 2, and we were here, and the jetty's here. And she's walking, she's 80 years old, her husband is walking by the side of her, he's 81, they're two retired doctors. Okay?
Yes.
And she's driving along, she has a heart attack in the scooter.
Oh.
She falls over, the throttle goes on, the steering moves to the left, and she drives off the jetty and falls between the two ships.
Oh.
And she's strapped in to her chair. She immediately sinks down. The husband dives in after her. He doesn't come up. Our crew from the Queen Mary, they run to the jetty. They're looking to put throwing aids in, but nobody's coming up. Our training is nobody enters the water.
Yeah.
Somebody from the Ada ship, a deck guy from the Ada ship, he dived in. He pulled the man up, saved his life. He then ducked back down. He managed to unbuckle the lady from the mobility scooter and bring her to the top, but she was already dead. Okay?
Yeah.
So these things happen. So we have to be aware, yeah? Now, the weather and sea conditions and movement of the tender will also increase the risk of accidents, so we need to be aware of that. Even in normal conditions, even if we're doing proper crowd management, things can still go wrong. And we also need to make sure that trip hazards are either well marked or cordoned off. The officer in charge will always be in charge, and you must follow their instructions. The deck crew will usually be the emergency party, and the hotel crew will deal with crowd control. Shout man overboard if somebody falls over. Throw a life buoy to the person in the water. Stop anybody else disembarking the tender, and clear the pontoon or immediate quayside area. The person in charge will contact the bridge for the man overboard response or local emergency services for extra assistance. You must follow all instructions from the officer in charge. Use the appropriate rescue equipment to recover the person from the water. Do not jump into the water. Ensure that you do not endanger yourself attempting to perform a rescue. Okay? Because the last thing we want is you to get into trouble, and then we've got two people to get out of the water. Incidents such as tender evacuation or medical emergencies will mainly involve performing your normal role as either the deck or the hotel crew. A level of crowd management is likely to increase as guests may have to wait to embark or disembark until the situation has been dealt with. If a tender has an incident that requires them to evacuate it quickly, then the priority is to make sure that people can get out safely. The tender crew will be in charge inside the tender, with the shore or pontoon officer in charge outside. The deck crew still need to tie the tender up properly and position the steps or ramp. The hotel crew need to get people clear of the immediate area. Everybody should be counted out of the tender to check the person numbers. People should be kept together once they have safely disembarked. In the case of a medical emergency, you should follow the instructions from the medical team. Closed loop communication, we use this all the time. So if I give you an order, you repeat that order back to me, I confirm to you that you got it correct. If you didn't have it correct, I would correct you, you would repeat it back to me, I then confirm that you've got it correct, okay? That saves us having any mistakes. It's particularly important to make sure that instructions are understood in an emergency situation. Same thing. So, any questions? No?
No.
So, when you're shoreside, you need to make sure that there is a safe area. When you're shoreside, we need to make sure that we've got ropes are long enough.
Yes.
We need to make sure that the positioning of the ropes are at the same place all the time.
Right.
We need to maximise our berth capacity. So, you know, if we've got room for 2 tenders, 3 tenders, we make sure we keep that room. And we don't misposition a tender so that we can only get 2 in instead of 3, for example. Okay? We don't put hands on unless they've asked.
Yes.
Okay? Happy with that?
Happy.
All right? Good, well done. Another training finished.